think my granddaughter wants to hear what I have to say. On this day, which is intended to be a joyous and hopeful day, I suspect that many of us come together with very heavy hearts. I say that because we are all too aware of the larger world, how it feels like this is a critical time for all humanity, and especially for us Jews, for the people of Israel. Yes, we Jews who have been in the forefront of most social and humane causes, certainly in the past century, if not longer, appear to find ourselves with too few friends in this dangerous world. Ironically, our most outspoken supporters, if not friends, are to be found among right-wing radio, television personalities, right-wing politicians, Christian fundamentalists, whatever their motive. And I have no doubt that we Jews will continue to be in the forefront of many of those causes that seek to better the human condition. But I also have no doubt that we Jews need each other as much as ever, or to use contemporary language, that we need to cover one another's back that much more at the present time. Be we from Israel, or France, or Belgium, or Holland, or Switzerland, and yes, the United States. For we know that an evil and hateful spirit is yet again fermenting. And let us not be deceived by believing that it has to do with Israeli settlements or the so-called occupied territories, or even the human tragedy that was endured by the people of Gaza. Near the end of my recent trip to Israel, I met one of the leaders of a Westchester congregation. He related to me that a young rabbi applying for a rabbinic position, told of being advised in school not to talk about Israel. As for many Jewish people, Israel, and especially this latest war, have become very controversial, with many resenting the severity of Israel's response. He asked me if I have encountered that kind of controversy in my congregation. And I said, not directly, though I have spoken with some members who've told me of heated debates and even arguments that they've had with their friends about Israel's response. My friends, as supportive as this congregation has been toward Israel during these years, I have to believe that there are some here today who have been judging Israel very harshly, to believe that Israel has put a cheap price on Palestinian lives. And to you especially, I want to say that I have always known and seen firsthand just weeks ago that Israel is a country that respects and cherishes all human life, Jew and Arab. I heard that message articulated over and over by military leaders, political leaders, people who have experienced the agony of war and who are more tolerant and hopeful than I am that we human beings will yet learn how to live together. I heard over and over that we Jews, whether we identify ourselves as religious or not, embrace a heritage that is rooted in protecting life and doing everything possible to save life. And while many of you might have in mind some of those pictures of devastation that you saw on CNN, I have in mind the Israeli soldiers with whom I spoke as we sat on a wooden bench on the border of Gaza, to find all killing abhorrent. And for those of you who've been troubled by Israel's behavior, I can only recommend that you go to Israel and see and talk and listen, and then make your own judgment regarding what we are as Jews and how most Israeli Jews cherish the same humane ideals that you cherish and affirm. Yes, there is pain and tragedy when children become the victims of the decisions made by adults. There is tragedy when children become the expendable collateral damage of a terror group that hides its rocket launchers near schools and apartment buildings, and that digs its tunnel entrances by areas that are filled with children and elderly people. In a recent book entitled Because They Hate, the author, Bridget Gabriel, a courageous and articulate Palestinian woman, describes how she and other children were used as human shields in previous wars by Palestinian leaders. She tells of how rocket launchers would intentionally be moved from building to building, each with children, so as to lure Israeli attacks upon those buildings. She recalls being in a shelter with 9 children and her mother pleading with the military leader to move the rocket launcher away from the young children, but to no avail. She says that Hamas has perfected using children to gain the world's sympathy. It's how children are used as disposable collateral in order to win the war of public opinion. Yes, I recently went to Israel because I needed to see and experience and hear for myself. And in truth, it's hard to capture in words the spirit of what I saw and heard and touched. I saw a group of nursery-aged children sitting around a table, eating lunch. Their kibbutz was near Gaza. They had endured months of alarm sirens and rocket fire. They were beautiful, innocent children who had been traumatized beyond what I can imagine, running back and forth to and from bomb shelters. I met with the mayor of Sderot, which is located about 3 miles from Gaza, and the mayor of Tel Aviv, which is supposedly safe 40 miles away. In Sderot, I heard a message of courage and determination to maintain the normalcy of life. In Tel Aviv, Mayor Ron Huldayal spoke of an inevitable agreement between the Israelis and Palestinians, even as he did not envision such an agreement in his lifetime. Only that at some time, the Palestinians will come to realize that coexistence is their only way, and that it will be at a time when people come to believe that they have too much to lose by perpetuating war and teaching hatred to their children. I met with the former pilot and brigadier general at the site of an Iron Dome, which was so effective during the war. But as touching as anything was my visit to Soroka Hospital in Beersheba, where I met with wounded soldiers. What a painful tragedy to see beautiful young men, one with the side of his head smashed in, another with his face reconstructed, and others who were in comas. And deeply touching for me was when one mother asked if I would go into her son's room and recite a prayer of recovery. And no, it didn't matter in the least to her that I was a Reform rabbi. Were there times when I felt that I was in danger? No. But it was somewhat embarrassing to repeatedly be told how much my visit meant to people and how they yearned for gestures of support and unity in the larger Jewish world. Yes, the media focused upon the blood and destruction, this war of self-defense, rather than upon Israel's determination to avoid Palestinian civilian casualties. Yes, the devastation brought upon the people of Gaza was and is horrible. And please believe me when I say that most Israelis also feel that way. And I heard that from soldiers and pilots and politicians and ordinary people who want only to coexist in peace with the Palestinian people. For sure, the war in Gaza no doubt caused most of us to consider the condition not only of Israel, but of much of our world, and what it means to be Jewish in today's world. For the struggle goes way beyond Israel's security and existence. All through Europe, new reality is rising. Entire Muslim neighborhoods controlled by hardline religious fanatics who are looking to dictate a new social and political reality throughout much of Europe. In Germany, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in Morocco, and most of all in France, Jews have been targeted for vicious attacks. Chants, gas the Jews. Hitler was right. Then there is ISIS, a grotesque perversion of what it means to be human, let alone religious. Yes, it's awful and frightening, but I think that we've all come to realize that this is surely not a war against Israel. This is a war against Western civilization and the values and ideals that we hold precious. Israel had been receiving the blows, but we Jews and our fellow Americans also are the big and ultimate targets. We are the big Satan, while Israel is the small Satan. And if we can imagine the consequences of a world without Israel, which is the vision of men, we might conclude only that it wouldn't be a very pleasant existence for anyone other than the fundamentalist leaders who would continue to bask in their perversion and in their wealth and power. Now, with this latest effort against ISIS, we can only hope that it will serve to extinguish some of the evil from our world, even as we all know that such is the monumental challenge of our day. Could we have imagined a joint effort with Arab countries? Yes, our world seems to be rapidly changing, and we can only hope that it will lead us to a better place in time. Imagine this message broadcast throughout the Arab world not long ago by one of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. We are not like the children of Israel, as you will find among them the most greedy of people for life, whereas we yearn for death and martyrdom. Every mother, especially the mothers in Palestine, but every mother in the Islamic nation, must nurse her children on hatred of the children of Zion. We will plant this in our children's souls so that a new generation will grow among us, which will erase them from the face of the earth. Yes, there is a great difference between our cultures. 3 Jewish teenagers were murdered months ago. Palestinians were dancing and celebrating in the streets. When a Palestinian teen was brutally killed by Israelis, all of Israel expressed their national sorrow and asked contrast between the mentality of Israel and that of Israel's enemies was never so loudly expressed as when the Arab killers became heroes and the Jewish killers became prisoners. What about the calls for boycotts against Israel? Academic boycotts that seek to punish a country that places such value upon enlightenment and discovery and open debate. Boycotts against companies that do business with Israel in the so-called occupied territory. I can only say shame on all of these people for their hypocrisy and for their ignorance. Where are the calls for boycotts against all of those nations that have zero regard for human rights? Those Arab nations where being gay subjects one to death. Those countries where women are demeaned and abused and without a voice or a face. Maddie Friedman is a former Associated Press correspondent who recently wrote a compelling essay. She speaks of the media's obsession with Jews, how every possible flaw in Israeli society is so aggressively reported. She says that Palestinians are not taken seriously as agents of their own fate, and that they are portrayed as passive victims at the hands of the Jews. She writes, news organizations have decided that this conflict is more important than, for example, the more than 1,600 women murdered in Pakistan last year, or the carnage in the Congo, or the conflicts no one has even heard of in India or Thailand, to which we might add the more than 170,000 people killed in Syria, the brutality in Iraq, the girls who were kidnapped in Nigeria, and all of the other grotesque and violent stories of which we've learned in the past months. Maddie Friedman reminds us that the descendants of powerless people who were pushed out of Europe and pushed out of the Islamic Middle East have become what their grandparents were, the pool into which the world spits, or the screen onto which it has become socially acceptable to project the things that people hate about themselves in their own countries, even as Israel has done more good for more people than most countries in this world. So my message to you, go to Israel and see and hear for yourself. Go to Israel and realize that Israel represents the front line for all of us who treasure not only our Jewish identity, but for all of us who cling to a vision of a world rooted in civilized and humane values and ideals. Go to Israel and realize that this tiny country stands courageously for all of us and is ours also. So, in such a complex world, it seems to me that the the challenge to us Jews is both simple and profound. We learned a Hebrew word last night. According to the Torah, whenever an individual was called for an important mission, his response was, "Hineni, here I am." So it is that this is one of those times when we are all needed to respond in that way. For Israel is not only their country, it is our country. It is the country of the visions and dreams of our grandparents and great-grandparents, and all of those generations who sought only to live in dignity, in security, and freedom. Yes, the task of somehow taking this broken world and bringing some sense of hope and wholeness to those who are abused and demeaned. That is surely a big part of our Jewish task. But for those severely wounded Israeli soldiers who will always carry the anguish of war with them, for those young children who spent so many months in fear, running to and from bomb shelters, for those Jews of Europe who've been attacked and brutalized, we owe it to all of them, to ourselves, to respond, Hineni. Here I am to stand with you and to help bring a ray of light, the touch of goodness and hope to our world.